And then here goes the master bathroom with the double sinks. And then 2 separate closets. One right here. And then on the other side. Come check it out.
Monique did not have to die. I didn't have to throw her out like she was garbage either. My baby was so precious to me. To all of us, she was so valuable. How dare they?
December 31st, 2019. The final day of a decade. While most people were preparing for New Year's celebrations, 28-year-old Monique Baugh was focused on work. As a real estate agent with Chris Lindahl Real Estate, she had built a reputation for going above and beyond for her clients. Even on New Year's Eve, she was willing to show a property to a potential buyer. The house was located in Maple Grove, a peaceful Minnesota suburb. It was vacant, listed for sale, and seemingly perfect for what her client had described over the phone. Monique had spoken with this client multiple times over the past 2 days. The voice on the other end seemed genuinely interested, asking detailed questions about the property and expressing urgency about viewing it before the new year. At 3 p.m. sharp, Monique pulled into the driveway of the Maple Grove home. Security cameras captured her vehicle arriving at the residence. She stepped out, professional and punctual as always. She checked her phone, perhaps wondering if her client was running late. Minutes passed. She waited by her car, then walked toward the front door. Still no sign of the prospective buyer. What Monique didn't know was that someone was indeed watching her every move. But this person had no intention of buying a house. They had no interest in square footage, school districts, or mortgage rates. They were there for an entirely different purpose, one that would transform this routine showing into something deadly. Monique Baugh was so much more than a real estate professional. She was a devoted mother to 2 young daughters, ages 1 and 3. Her family described her as having an infectious laugh and a personality that lit up every room she entered. She loved reading bedtime stories to her girls, using a special purple pillow that had become part of their nightly ritual. Her children were her world, and everything she did was motivated by her desire to build a better future for them. As a real estate agent, Monique had found her calling. She genuinely cared about helping families find their perfect home. Colleagues knew her as someone who would answer calls at any hour, someone who understood that buying a house was one of the biggest decisions in a person's life. Her dedication to her clients was unwavering, which made her response to these persistent phone calls completely predictable. The calls had started 2 days earlier, a woman's voice claiming to be interested in the Maple Grove property. The caller seemed knowledgeable about real estate, asking the right questions and using industry terminology. She explained that she needed to see the house quickly before making a decision. There was nothing unusual about the request, except for one detail that investigators would later discover. The calls were coming from what law enforcement would identify as a burner phone, Miles, a disposable cell phone purchased specifically for this interaction. The caller had gone to great lengths to conceal her identity, paying cash for the device just days before contacting Monique. This level of preparation suggested something far more complex than a simple house hunting expedition. On December 30th, the day before this fateful showing, the same caller had arranged to meet Monique at the property. Monique had arrived as scheduled, but once again, no one showed up. Instead of being deterred, the caller reached out again with an apology and a request to reschedule for the following day, New Year's Eve. Most real estate agents might have been suspicious after a no-show, but Monique was committed to excellent customer service. She agreed to the rescheduled appointment, never suspecting that the failed first meeting was part of a larger plan designed to build her trust and lower her guard. As Monique stood outside that Maple Grove home on December 31st, checking her phone and waiting for a client who would never arrive, she had no way of knowing that her name was already connected to a complex conspiracy involving multiple individuals. She couldn't have imagined that her simple act of professional courtesy, showing houses to potential buyers, had made her a target in someone else's violent scheme. The security footage from that afternoon shows a woman going about her normal business routine, completely unaware that she was walking into a trap that had been weeks in the making. Within an hour of this footage being recorded, Monique Baugh would be found dead in a North Minneapolis alley, the victim of multiple gunshot wounds. Tonight, we're going to uncover how a fake house showing became the first move in a murder plot that would shock investigators, devastate a family, and reveal a conspiracy that reached into some unexpected places. We'll explore how modern technology helped solve this case, and why the legal resolution has been anything but simple. Before we dive into this mystery, we want to know, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your location in the comments, and let's solve this together. Your engagement helps us bring these important stories to light. What happened to Monique Baugh in the hour between that surveillance footage and her death represents one of the most complex criminal conspiracies investigators had ever encountered. And it all started with a simple phone call about a house showing. At 6:38 p.m. on New Year's Eve, an automated system detected 3 gunshots in a North Minneapolis alley. This wasn't a human ear picking up the sound, it was shot spotter technology, a network of acoustic sensors designed to identify and locate gunfire in real time. Within seconds, the system had triangulated the exact location and automatically dispatched police to the scene. Officers arrived to find a young woman on the ground, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Duct tape was still wrapped around one of her wrists. Despite immediate medical attention, Monique Baugh died shortly after arriving at the hospital. What investigators didn't realize in those first critical hours was that this murder scene would become the final piece of a puzzle that had been building throughout the day. Earlier that evening, at approximately 5:40 p.m., police had responded to a shooting at a Minneapolis home. The victim was a man who had been shot multiple times in front of 2 small children. Remarkably, he survived the attack and was able to provide crucial information to responding officers. The proximity of these 2 shootings, less than an hour apart, and involving the same weapon, immediately suggested a connection. Detective work in the 21st century looks very different from the investigations we see in old movies. Gone are the days when solving complex crimes relied primarily on witness statements and physical evidence. Today's criminals leave behind something far more revealing than fingerprints. They leave digital footprints that are nearly impossible to erase. The breakthrough in this case came through cell site location information, commonly known as CSLI. Every time a cell phone connects to a tower, whether making a call, sending a text, or simply maintaining service, that interaction is logged with precise timestamps and location data. For investigators, this creates a detailed map of where suspects have been and when they were there. The CSLI analysis revealed something extraordinary. Multiple phones had been moving in coordination throughout the day, following a pattern that suggested careful planning and execution. These weren't random movements. They showed a level of organization that indicated multiple people working together toward a common goal. The investigation team began tracking backwards from the crime scenes. They identified phones that had been in the area of both shootings, then followed those devices throughout the day. What they discovered was a complex web of communication and movement that painted a clear picture of conspiracy. Security footage from an electronics store proved particularly valuable. Cameras had captured someone purchasing a prepaid cell phone on December 29th, just 2 days before the murder. The buyer paid in cash and provided no identification. Standard practice for someone trying to remain anonymous. But CSLI data showed that 2 other phones belonging to known individuals were at that same electronics store at the exact time of the purchase. This created the first solid link between the anonymous burner phone and specific suspects. The coordination was remarkable. One person buying the untraceable phone, while 2 accomplices accompanied them, all captured through the invisible network of cell tower connections. The digital trail extended far beyond phone records. Investigators were able to track the movement of vehicles through a combination of traffic cameras, business surveillance systems, and automatic license plate readers. This technology has become increasingly sophisticated, creating a network of digital eyes that record the movement of vehicles throughout urban areas. One vehicle in particular drew investigators' attention: a rented U-Haul truck. Rental records showed when and where the truck was picked up, and by whom. More importantly, GPS data from the vehicle itself provided a minute-by-minute account of where it had traveled throughout the day. This technological feature, designed for fleet management, became a crucial piece of evidence. The GPS data revealed that the U-Haul had been at the Maple Grove house during the time frame when Monique was kidnapped. It then traveled to her Minneapolis home, and finally to the North Minneapolis alley where her body was discovered. The truck's location data matched perfectly with the timeline of events that investigators were assembling. Social media analysis added another layer to the investigation. While the main suspects had been careful about their phone communications, investigators found connections through social media platforms, dating apps, and other digital services. These platforms collect vast amounts of data about user behavior, connections, and location history. The rental truck led investigators to additional suspects through a process of following connections. The person who rented the vehicle was questioned and provided information about who had requested the truck and why. This human intelligence, combined with the digital evidence, began to reveal the full scope of the conspiracy. Text message records showed a pattern of communication between multiple individuals in the days leading up to the murder. While the actual content of many messages had been deleted, the metadata information about when messages were sent and received provided valuable insights into the timing and coordination of the plot. Financial records became another crucial component. Investigators tracked cash withdrawals, purchases, and other financial activities that corresponded with the planning and execution of the crime. The electronic trail of money movement often reveals connections that suspects believe they've hidden. What emerged from this digital analysis was a picture of extensive planning involving multiple individuals, each playing a specific role in a larger scheme. The technology that these suspects thought would help them coordinate their activities instead became the very tool that exposed their conspiracy. This case represents a turning point in criminal investigation techniques. The combination of multiple data sources, cell phone records, GPS tracking, surveillance footage, and financial records created a nearly unbreakable chain of evidence. Modern criminals may understand individual technologies, but the interconnected nature of today's digital world makes it almost impossible to avoid leaving traces. The digital evidence would ultimately prove that this wasn't a random crime or a crime of passion. The level of coordination and planning, revealed through technology, painted a picture of a methodical, premeditated conspiracy that had been weeks in the making. The surveillance footage from the Maple Grove home tells a story that becomes more terrifying with each frame. Monique Baugh arrives punctually at 3 p.m., just as any professional real estate agent would. She waits. She checks her phone. She walks around the property. What the cameras capture next transforms an ordinary business meeting into something far more sinister. Two figures emerge from their hiding positions. They move with purpose, having waited for exactly this moment. Monique had no chance to run, no opportunity to call for help, no way to defend herself against what was about to unfold. In a matter of seconds, her normal Tuesday afternoon became a nightmare. The attackers immediately restrained her with duct tape, binding her hands and wrapping it around her neck. This wasn't random violence or a crime of opportunity. The presence of restraints proved this was planned. Someone had come prepared with specific tools for kidnapping. Someone had thought through exactly how they would subdue and transport their victim. A rented U-Haul truck appeared in the footage, backing up to the garage of the vacant home. The choice of vehicle was deliberate, large enough to conceal a person, common enough to avoid attention, and rental status made it harder to trace back to the perpetrators. The truck positioned itself to block the view from neighboring houses and passing traffic. Monique was forced into the cargo area of the truck. The security cameras captured her being escorted into the back of the vehicle, still alive, but now completely at the mercy of her captors. The footage shows the truck doors closing, sealing her fate. This would be the last time anyone would see Monique Baugh live on camera. The truck departed the Maple Grove location, with its victim trapped inside. But this kidnapping was only the beginning of a plan that would prove to be far more twisted than a simple abduction. The perpetrators had a specific destination in mind, And their ultimate target wasn't just Monique Meek, it was someone else entirely. The U-Haul traveled directly to Monique's own home in Minneapolis. Here, the true horror of this conspiracy became apparent. Someone had taken Monique's house keys during the kidnapping. Someone had forced her to provide information about her home, her family, her personal life. The attackers now had everything they needed to violate the sanctuary where she lived with her children and boyfriend. Using Monique's own keys that she carried every day, keys that represented safety and security immensurous, one of the attackers entered her home. This wasn't a break-in or a burglary. This was a calculated invasion made possible by exploiting their victim's own possessions against her family. Inside the house were Monique's 2 young daughters, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, along with her boyfriend, John Mitchell Momo. The children were experiencing what should have been a normal afternoon at home with their father figure. Instead, they were about to witness an act of violence that would traumatize them for life. The attacker confronted Mitchell Momo and opened fire, shooting him multiple times while the 2 small children watched in terror. These babies, barely old enough to understand what was happening, saw someone hurt the man who helped care for them. The psychological damage inflicted on these innocent victims extends far beyond the physical violence committed against the adults. Mitchell Momo collapsed, bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds. The children's screams filled the house. But remarkably, despite his severe injuries, he remained conscious. Through sheer determination and concern for the children's safety, he managed to reach his phone and call for emergency help. His survival would prove crucial to solving this case. The attack at the house served multiple purposes in this twisted scheme. It sent a message, it inflicted maximum psychological damage, and it demonstrated that the perpetrators were willing to commit violence in front of children to achieve their goals. This wasn't just about harming one person, it was about destroying an entire family unit. While emergency responders rushed to save Mitchell Momo's life, Monique remained trapped in the back of the U-Haul truck with her captors. She had been forced to witness the violation of her own home through providing access to it. She knew that the person she loved had been shot, possibly killed. She knew her children had witnessed violence in their own home. The truck left the scene of the house shooting and drove to North Minneapolis. The perpetrators had one final act to complete. They had achieved their primary goal of attacking Mitchell Momo, but Monique had served her purpose and could now identify them. She had become a liability that needed to be eliminated. In a desolate alley, far from her home and children, Monique Baugh's life ended. 3 gunshots from the same weapon used on her boyfriend. The same gun that had been fired in front of her daughters was now turned on their mother. The attackers left her body in the alley and disappeared into the night. The duct tape around her wrists told investigators that she had been restrained until the very end. She had spent her final hour knowing that her family had been attacked, knowing that her children had witnessed violence, knowing that she would never see them again. The psychological torment inflicted on Monique in those final moments represents a level of cruelty that goes beyond simple murder. The weapon used in both shootings would later be recovered by investigators, providing crucial ballistic evidence linking the 2 crime scenes. But by the time police found that gun, Monique Baugh was already gone, leaving behind 2 young daughters who would grow up without their mother. The level of planning in this case is absolutely staggering. If you're as shocked as we are by these details, smash that like button. It helps us bring more important stories like Monique's to light. Every share and like ensures that victims aren't forgotten and that their stories reach people who need to hear them. What investigators would soon discover was that this elaborate plot wasn't random. Someone had specifically targeted this family, and the reasons why would reveal connections to criminal enterprises that extended far beyond this single tragic day. The investigation into who could plan such an elaborate scheme led detectives into a world where law enforcement training had been twisted into criminal expertise. The woman's voice that had lured Monique to her death belonged to someone who understood exactly how the justice system worked, because she had once been part of it. Elsa Segura was a former Hennepin County probation officer. For years, she had worked within the criminal justice system, supervising offenders, writing reports, and making recommendations that could determine whether someone went to prison or remained free. She understood surveillance techniques, investigative procedures, and how to avoid detection. This knowledge made her the perfect person to execute the deception that trapped Monique. Segura's professional background provided her with skills that most criminals don't possess. She knew how to speak authoritatively, how to build trust over the phone, and how to create believable scenarios. Her years of experience dealing with deception in her probation work had taught her to recognize manipulation tactics, knowledge she now used to manipulate others. The phone calls to Monique weren't random or improvised. Segura had studied real estate terminology, researched the property, and prepared responses to likely questions. Her approach was methodical and professional, drawing on her law enforcement training to create a convincing persona. She understood that the key to successful deception was attention to detail and consistency. But Segura wasn't acting alone or for her own motives. She was in a romantic relationship with a man investigators believe masterminded the entire conspiracy, Lyndon Wiggins, also known by the street name L.A. Wiggins operated in Minneapolis's underground economy, dealing drugs and managing what law enforcement describes as a criminal enterprise. Wiggins had a history with Monique's boyfriend that stretched back years. Both men had been involved in the music industry, working with recording artists and managing talent. But their business relationship had deteriorated into something far more dangerous than a simple professional disagreement. The dispute centered around a recording artist and allegations about who controlled certain business interests. In the world of street-level music promotion, these conflicts often intersect with drug dealing, territory disputes, and questions of loyalty. What started as a business disagreement had evolved into something personal and violent. More damaging to their relationship were accusations that John Mitchell Momo had provided information to law enforcement about drug dealing operations. In criminal circles, being labeled a snitch or informant carries severe consequences. This allegation, whether true or false, had marked Mitchell Momo as a target for retribution. Wiggins assembled a team to carry out his revenge plot. Cedric Berry and Barry Davis were recruited as the muscle-late individuals who would handle the kidnapping, shooting, and murder. Both men were already involved in Wiggins's drug operation and had demonstrated their willingness to commit violence in service of criminal enterprises. The family connections within this conspiracy added another layer of complexity. Shantae Cherise Davis was married to Cedric Berry and was also the sister of Barry Davis. This meant that the core group included romantic partners and siblings, creating bonds that went beyond simple criminal association. These personal relationships made the conspiracy more resilient and harder for law enforcement to penetrate. The choice to target Monique rather than confronting Mitchell Momo directly reveals the psychological warfare aspect of this revenge plot. Wiggins wanted to inflict maximum emotional damage. Killing Mitchell Momo would end his suffering, but destroying his family while leaving him alive would create lasting torment. Monique became the perfect target for this twisted logic. She was innocent of any involvement in the drug trade or music industry disputes. She had no way to defend herself or see the attack coming. Her death would devastate Mitchell Momo while sending a message to anyone else who might consider cooperating with law enforcement. The use of Segura's law enforcement background to lure Monique was particularly cruel. Real estate agents must trust their clients to some degree. Mark, the profession requires meeting strangers at remote locations. Segura exploited this professional vulnerability, using her authoritative demeanor to overcome any natural caution Monique might have felt. The planning phase of this conspiracy took weeks. Wiggins had to coordinate multiple people, acquire the burner phone, rent the truck, and identify the perfect location for the kidnapping. Each step required careful timing and communication among the conspirators. The level of organization suggests this wasn't Wiggins' first complex criminal operation. Berry and Davis were chosen specifically for their willingness to commit extreme violence. The attack at Monique's home, with small children present, required individuals who could ignore basic human compassion. Their actions demonstrate a level of callousness that extends beyond normal criminal behavior into something more disturbing. The decision to use Monique's own keys to enter her home added an extra layer of violation to the crime. This wasn't just breaking and entering, it was using her possessions to destroy her family's sense of safety. Every time she had locked or unlocked her door, she had been protecting her children. Now those same keys were being used to threaten them. What makes this conspiracy particularly shocking is how an innocent woman's professional routine became the weapon used against her family. Monique's dedication to customer service, her willingness to show houses on holidays, her commitment to helping clients, all of these positive qualities were exploited by people who saw them as weaknesses to be manipulated. The contrast between Segura's former role as a probation officer and her current role as a murderous conspirator illustrates how completely someone can abandon their oath to protect society. She had once worked to rehabilitate offenders and protect communities. Now she was using that same knowledge to plan violence against innocent people. This wasn't just a murder, there was a calculated attack on the concept of trust itself. The arrests came swiftly once investigators had assembled their digital evidence. Within weeks of Monique's murder, law enforcement had identified and apprehended the main suspects. The strength of the cell phone data, surveillance footage, and witness testimony seemed to guarantee that justice would be served for this heinous crime. Cedric Berry and Barry Davis were the first to face trial. In June 2021, both men were convicted on multiple charges: aiding and abetting premeditated first-degree murder, aiding and abetting attempted premeditated first-degree murder, aiding and abetting kidnapping, and aiding and abetting first-degree felony murder while committing kidnapping. The jury had heard the evidence and reached their verdict. The sentences reflected the severity of their crimes. Both Barry and Davis received life in prison without the possibility of parole. These were the harshest penalties available under Minnesota law, reserved for the most serious offenses. At their sentencing hearings, both men maintained their innocence, but the court had spoken definitively. Elsa Segura's trial followed in late 2021. Despite her attempts to minimize her role in the conspiracy, the evidence of her involvement in luring Monique was overwhelming. The jury convicted her of aiding and abetting first-degree murder, and she too received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The former probation officer would spend the rest of her life behind bars. Lyndon Wiggins, identified as the mastermind, faced trial in 2022. The prosecution presented evidence of his role in organizing the conspiracy, his motive for targeting Mitchell Momo, and his coordination with the other defendants. The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping charges. Like the others, he was sentenced to life without parole. For nearly 2 years, it appeared that justice had been served. 4 people were serving life sentences for their roles in Monique's murder. Her family could begin the long process of healing, knowing that her killers would never walk free again. The legal system had worked as intended, holding all participants accountable for their actions. Then came the bombshell that no one expected. In early 2024, the Minnesota Supreme Court issued rulings that would fundamentally alter the case outcomes. The court overturned 2 of Elsa Segura's convictions and her life sentence, citing problems with the jury instructions provided during her trial. The justices determined that the instructions regarding aiding and abetting liability were legally insufficient and potentially misleading. The Supreme Court's analysis focused on a crucial legal distinction: the difference between knowingly participating in a kidnapping versus knowingly participating in a murder. The justices ruled that while Segura clearly knew she was helping to lure Monique into a trap, there wasn't sufficient evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt that she specifically knew murder would be the ultimate outcome. This legal technicality might seem minor to those outside the justice system, but it represents a fundamental principle of criminal law. Prosecutors must prove not just that someone participated in criminal activity, but that they had specific knowledge and intent regarding each individual crime charged. The jury instructions had blurred this distinction, potentially allowing conviction without meeting the precise legal standard required. The same legal reasoning led to an even more shocking development in March 2024. The Minnesota Supreme Court reversed Lyndon Wiggins' convictions on identical grounds: erroneous jury instructions concerning accomplice liability. The alleged mastermind of the entire conspiracy saw his life sentence overturned and was granted the right to a new trial. These reversals didn't mean that Segura and Wiggins were declared innocent. Instead, the Supreme Court ruled that their trials had been conducted improperly, violating their constitutional right to fair proceedings. The evidence against them remained strong, but legal technicalities had invalidated their convictions. The impact on Monique's family was devastating. After years of believing that justice had been achieved, they suddenly faced the possibility that two key conspirators might avoid life sentences. The legal system that had promised them closure was now extending the uncertainty and pain indefinitely. Elsa Segura's case reached resolution first. Rather than face a new trial with corrected jury instructions, she accepted a plea agreement in September 2024. She pleaded guilty to one count of kidnapping to commit great bodily harm. Her new sentence was 240 months, exactly 20 years in prison, with credit for time already served. The plea deal represented a significant reduction from her original life sentence. Prosecutors explained that accepting the plea would prevent years of additional appeals and provide certainty for the victim's family. However, Monique's relatives expressed frustration that Segura was getting off really easy and hadn't truly accepted responsibility for her actions. Judge Mark Kappelhoff addressed Segura directly during sentencing, noting that she could have been the person to warn Miss Baugh not to go to that showing, but instead chose another path that eventually led to Monique Baugh's death. His words captured the moral weight of her decisions, even within the constraints of the legal plea agreement. Lyndon Wiggins remains in Hennepin County Jail, awaiting his new trial on the original charges. His defense team has attempted various legal maneuvers to dismiss the case entirely, citing negative publicity and procedural issues. However, judges have consistently ruled that his retrial will proceed, meaning he still faces the possibility of life in prison if convicted again. The legal odyssey isn't over. Wiggins' new trial will require prosecutors to present their evidence again, this time with properly instructed juries and heightened scrutiny of the legal standards. The same digital evidence and witness testimony remain available, but the legal framework for conviction has become more complex. Shante Sharice Davis, who played a supporting role in the conspiracy, received probation for aiding an offender. Her sentence reflected her lesser involvement compared to the main perpetrators. These legal developments highlight the tension between achieving justice for victims and maintaining constitutional protections for defendants. While Monique's family seeks maximum accountability, the justice system must balance their needs against legal precision and fair trial rights. In the years since Monique Baugh's death, her family has refused to let her story end with tragedy. While others might have retreated into private grief, Monique's mother and relatives made a conscious decision to transform their pain into something meaningful, ensuring that her life would be remembered for love rather than loss. The most touching tribute came from an unexpected source: Monique's own children. Her daughters, now older but still processing the absence of their mother, continue to maintain a relationship with her memory through daily rituals that would break any parent's heart. Each night, they say goodnight to Monique's photograph, kissing and hugging the image as if she were still there to tuck them in. These bedtime routines center around a purple pillow that had become central to Monique's relationship with her girls. She had used this pillow every night while reading them stories, creating a cozy tradition that made learning fun and bedtime special. After her death, this simple household item became a powerful symbol of maternal love and the importance of storytelling in building family bonds. Wanda Williams Baugh, Monique's mother, recognized that this purple pillow represented something larger than grief. It represented the joy Monique had found in nurturing her children's imagination. Working together with her granddaughters, Wanda helped transform their shared memories into something tangible that could benefit other families. The result was Ruby and Onyx and the Magical Pillow Adventure, a children's book that the family self-published and made available on Amazon. The story, inspired by that same purple pillow, takes young readers on an adventure that celebrates creativity, family bonds, and the power of imagination. Every page reflects Monique's belief in the importance of reading to children and the magical worlds that books can create. This wasn't just a memorial project. It was an active business venture that continues to generate income while spreading positive messages to children everywhere. Families who purchase the book are unknowingly participating in Monique's legacy, sharing in the same love of storytelling that she had passed on to her own daughters. The family's efforts to preserve Monique's memory extended beyond publishing. They agreed to participate in the Hulu Real Crime series Me Hereafter, sharing their story with a national audience. Their motivation wasn't publicity or fame. It was ensuring that Monique would be remembered as a complete person, rather than just another crime statistic. Cheryl Sinkfield, Monique's cousin, who had been raised alongside her like a sister, became a powerful advocate for keeping her memory alive. She spoke openly about the ongoing difficulty of processing such a profound loss, acknowledging that the pain does not get easier even as time passes. Her honesty about the grieving process has helped other families facing similar tragedies. The family's public advocacy work serves multiple purposes beyond honoring Monique. By sharing their story, they've become voices for other victims of violent crime, particularly those caught in conflicts they never chose to be part of. Their visibility helps humanize crime statistics and remind society that behind every headline is a family dealing with permanent loss. Monique's daughters continue to visit her gravesite regularly, celebrating her birthday each year and maintaining traditions that keep her presence alive in their daily lives. These visits aren't just about mourning. They're about celebration, remembrance, and ensuring that the girls grow up knowing who their mother was beyond the circumstances of her death. The ripple effects of Monique's case have extended into criminal justice reform discussions. Her death highlighted vulnerabilities in how real estate professionals interact with unknown clients, leading to increased awareness about safety protocols for agents showing properties. Industry organizations have developed new guidelines for verifying client identity and conducting showings in safer environments. Law enforcement agencies have also studied this case as an example of how digital forensics can solve complex conspiracies. The successful integration of cell phone data, surveillance footage, and traditional investigative techniques has become a model for other jurisdictions dealing with similar crimes. The legal complexities surrounding the Supreme Court reversals have sparked broader conversations about jury instruction standards and the precise requirements for proving conspiracy charges. Legal scholars continue to analyze this case as an example of how technical legal issues can affect outcomes in emotionally charged trials. Perhaps most importantly, Monique's story serves as a reminder that criminal violence affects far more people than just its immediate victims. Her children will carry the impact of this crime throughout their lives. Her family must navigate holidays, birthdays, and milestones without her presence. The community lost a dedicated professional who was building positive relationships with families seeking homes. But they've also demonstrated remarkable resilience. Instead of allowing Monique's death to define their family's future, they've chosen to let her life and values guide their path forward. The children's book, the public advocacy, and the continued traditions all represent active choices to honor love over hate. Monique's story reminds us that behind every headline is a real person with family who loved them. Her legacy lives on through her daughter's laughter, her mother's strength, and her family's determination to ensure she's remembered for the joy she brought to the world. Subscribe to help us continue sharing these important stories and hit share so Monique's legacy reaches even more people. Every view, like, and share ensures that victims like Monique are seen as whole human beings rather than just tragic endings. Their love for her continues to grow, even in her absence, proving that some bonds are stronger than even death itself.